I mean, quite frankly, it surprised me that they kept him in the first place.
Yeah.
I mean, the argument could rage that there was a complete and utter detachment on both sides of the equation, not just from Conte, but I think from the players that played for Conte. Given that Stellini was probably cut from the same cloth as Conte, otherwise he probably wouldn't be in the same space as Conte repeatedly and likely to join up with him again in his next incarnation, yes. The next fortunate employee of Antonio Conte.
Yeah.
It would almost make you curious as to why Tottenham and Daniel Levy felt that the holding pattern was best held by Stellini. When you look at it and you see that the one thing that I think that was a really compelling situation was Tottenham's inability to overcome Sheffield United in the quarterfinals of the FA Cup. We might not be hearing so much background noise about certain things if they had achieved that most reasonable of outcomes, beating a championship side in the quarterfinals of the Cup with all the glitterati of the players that were available to them at that time. And Stellini presided over that too, because Conte was away.
So if you'd been Daniel, you would have said goodbye to Conte and goodbye to Stellini at the same time.
It feels strange for it not to. And now, of course, unless you're privy to the absolute dynamics of everything that's going on behind the scenes, there was nothing that suggested to me that we were sitting there looking at a mastermind that was in the waiting. We weren't sitting there watching Gru suddenly manifest himself out of the ashes of Conte's regime in the incarnation of Stellini. Ryan Mason is a nice fella. He's not the answer in the longer game, but it might have seemed, given the fact that there was some sort of a cord that was brought out after the Mourinho debacle, when they took Mourinho out 2 years ago and replaced him with Ryan Mason. It's not ideal. Yeah. It's not the winning formula you'd look at for what is a top-end Premier League football club, but I think it was slightly better than Stellini. That being said,
it's not ideal, Sam. It's an absolute botch.
No, it's far from ideal. It's far from ideal to be in a situation where your last three managers have been Jose Mourinho, Nuno Espirito Santos and Antonio Conte, and they seem to lurch from one perspective to another. They seem to have gone from a winner in Mourinho with a culture, then off to Nuno Espirito Santo, who's not a winner, but is someone that was operating at a reasonable level in the Premier League, then back to a nailed-on winner with Antonio Conte. There doesn't seem to be a coherent strategy around what they're thinking about and what they're trying to achieve, but I can understand some of the reasons behind it.
The message from Levy was interesting yesterday, the statement, and it was farewell to Cristiano Stellini. Ironically, as you rightly say, whenever Conte pitches up next, Stellini will no doubt be sitting on his right-hand shoulder. Yeah. But at the end of it, the statement was entitled a club update from Daniel. I don't think there's a particular... I don't know why they would do that to instill a bit of warmth between Levy and the support. I mean, they're not exactly on first name terms,
I think that's semantic. I mean, would it have been appropriate to say a club update from Levy? Because that's not how one would refer to them to oneself. I mean, I suppose we can be in the area of semantics and say a club update from the chairman or a club update from Daniel Levy. I don't think it really matters. I think whatever he would have said, whatever he says, people are going to turn around and say, not good enough, not acceptable. Look at the absolute shambles of where we are. All down to you. Doesn't matter.
What is interesting at the moment is to try and get into the mind of Daniel Levy. And where his thinking is at and why he's done what he's done. As you rightly say, Mourinho gone, Nuno Espirito Santo gone, now Conte gone, Stellini gone, Ryan Mason in for a bit, but he'll be gone whenever the new man comes in. Yeah. So we've come upon this again. Levy, do you remember, Simon? He recently addressed the students at Cambridge Union. Yep. And he talked about his experiences with managers and the idea of longevity in the dugout.
I think it's very, very difficult in the competitive nature of football today that you have continuity of a manager over a long time. If you look on the continent, it's so different to how it is in England. In England, we all dream of having managers that, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years. In other countries, coaches are appointed for 2 years. They're far less important. The media attention is not on the coach. It's much more about the club. It's a cultural thing we have in England. The manager is almost bigger than the club. But in reality, he isn't. I think whenever you appoint a coach, you're always appointing them because you think they're going to make you win. You don't appoint them with the intention, it's only going to be for 1 year or 2 years. You hope it will be long term. All I'm making the observation is, in Europe, coaches are only appointed for 1 or 2 years. Whereas in this country, we're obsessed with, if someone gets appointed and only has a 2-year contract, how do you expect him to succeed if he's only got 2 years? They know when they come in to manage a football club, it's just part of the game. It's not personal. We're in the business of winning, and if they don't win enough games, they know that their job's on the line, and they're paid very well for that. So it's just how it is. It's not personal. All the managers have left Tottenham. I'm either still in contact with, or they come back to games. It's not personal.
It's not personal. But can we not simplify it? Win games. Then the manager's deemed to be successful. Then the manager lasts long term.
Yeah, make exponential improvements.
Yeah,
I mean, the bottom line is there's a lot in what Daniel said there, which is substantive, and there's some of it which I don't quite agree with. But notwithstanding that, he is right. The idea, and it is the way that it's structured, like the way we have to know what players get paid on a weekly basis. No other industry talks about how much everyone earns on a weekly basis. Football still lives in that world where he earns 200 grand a week or 10 grand a week or whatever it is. And the idea that coaches are bigger than the clubs is probably a perspective that I concur with, because they're not. They're an employee. They happen to be the public-facing employee, and they're not the cure for all. They're not the panacea.
Yeah. Is that an English thing, as he says?
I think there probably is an element of that, but I also think that ultimately the ultimate antidote to being a threat for your job is to win football matches.
Exactly.
But also win it within the compartment of the nuance of the expectations of the football club. Now, Roy Hodgson was a Palace manager for 4 years. So that flies in the face of the idea that the managers in the Europe are employed for 2 years, and the managers in this country should perhaps embrace that. I'm in the same camp as Daniel to some extent, which is, what is wrong with assuming that a new broom will sweep clean? What is wrong with expecting top-end managers to hit the ground running and affect outcomes quickly?
And win.
Because that's the price on the ticket now.
Right.
The price on the ticket is millions of pounds worth of salaries for these guys. Right, and with that comes an instantaneous expectation of the category that your club plays in of an exponential outcome, which is better. So if it's Palace, it's being better than being relegation fodder, which kept Roy Hodgson in a job for 4 years. If it's another football club, it might be punching up the league. If it's Tottenham Hotspur, it's being inside the top 4 and trying to win something. Each club will have a different dynamic. Now, where Daniel kind of contradicts himself is there must be a strategy for appointments of managers. There must be a thought process of what your manager looks like, or not in terms of aesthetically, I mean in terms of what he represents. And then you've got these diametrically opposed appointments. You've got Jose Mourinho, right? Then you've got Nuno Espirito Santo, and they're in different zip codes in terms of outlook, disposition. They might be slightly pragmatic in their style of play, but I'm not sure that the Spurs DNA is to be pragmatic. It's to be ambitious and flamboyant.
Yeah.
So surely you must understand that. And then you've gone off on another departure, flight of fancy, by bringing in another high-powered, highfalutin, previous winner in the incarnation of Antonio Conte. And there seems to be a disconnect. Now, some of that is fueled by managers' personality, and again, our fixation and fascination on coaches, which is where Daniel's going. We, from the outset, and in the end, we were right, because if you say things long enough and for a repeated amount of times, eventually you're going to be right. The temperamental nature of Antonio Conte's perspective found out itself in the end. Everyone forecast that Daniel Levy and Antonio Conte was a marriage made in hell. And it erupted 15 months ago after the Burnley game, when Conte comes out and says ridiculous outbursts, and Daniel's reaction to it, both publicly and privately, was to ignore it, and also to just to categorise it as the rantings of a coach, right? And 14 months later, eventually we alighted upon the fact that Conte and Daniel Levy were in a difficult relationship and it was going to break down. And eventually, as I say, if you say things long enough, they'll come out to be true in the end.
Yeah.
So the bottom line is that in the ideal scenario, you get what you get in Jurgen Klopp, or you get what you get in Pep Guardiola. Because Jurgen Klopp was given a lot of latitude for the first 2 or 3 years that they didn't win anything. But what he did was he exponentially improved Liverpool, and you could see Fenway and John Henry could see what was happening on the pitch.
Yeah.
He could see the change of the Brendan Rodgers era of getting close and having a whiff. And of course, Klopp lost two cup finals in a row, yet still the background noise. I remember saying 2 or 3 years ago, that $64 million smile that appeals to the media is getting him away from things because he's not winning anything. But underneath it, you could see the fabric of Liverpool changing.
Right.
So the ownership model would have accepted that.
Yeah.
And Tottenham Hotspur are just lurching from one dynamic to the other, from Harry Redknapp to Pochettino. Pochettino was, at the time, people would have gone, oh, from Southampton? Yeah, great, he's done a good job at Southampton, but we're not Southampton, we're Tottenham Hotspur. And by the way, but then Pochettino came in and you got alchemy. And he got this irresistible force of a young group of players that are coming through, some good recruitment, people like Dele Alli that people had spotted but never taken up. And in he comes, and out comes this outcome. But at this moment in time, it's no doubt that Tottenham are floundering. And it's no doubt that Daniel... But in his mindset, if I may speak for his mindsets, he won't be listening to this background. Nobody likes to be called rude names.
Well, you keep on saying that, but he's bound to tune in now and again just to find out what the hell we're all going on about.
Well, he'll know
because from the outside, it's a mess.
Well, getting beat 6-1 by Newcastle, he doesn't need to tune into that noise. He knows what that's going to be said. He will know unequivocally, and whether he takes it on board literally is a different discussion, that there is a culture of a certain section of the fan base at Spurs, and it's not representative of all. Like everything in society, when you hear noisy activists, you think they represent the entire community, but they don't. They represent a segment of it. Now, this may be different in Spurs' case. It may be that the entire fan base thinks he's the worst thing and that should be gotten out of the football club. We
could put out now, for one if there's one Tottenham fan out there who's happy with the way it's going, give us a call. We're not going to hear from you, are we? 03717 223344. One fan out there who sticks with Levy through thick and thin, and this is thin, believe me. Give us a call, 03717 223344. Tottenham play Man United on Thursday. It's live and exclusive on talkSPORT.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.